Hello, just a quick little before the video note. Please do not actually watch the screen on this video. Watch it just don't watch it, listen to it while you do other stuff because it's just that repeated animation over and over again. Sorry, it is repeated, but Photoshop, which is what I was going to use, didn't want to work for me today, so I'm using Piskel instead. And without further ado, here is your regularly scheduled video. Hello, I'm Ganom, and I'm here to tell you my personal favorite episodes of Bob's Burgers, which remains one of the best adult cartoons to this day. The episodes I would recommend you watch first and show to other people first. And with that said, here are the top 10 episodes of Bob's Burgers. Number 10. Weekend at Mort's, Season 1, Episode 11. In this episode, when the restaurant gets green mold on the walls, Bob, Linda, and the kids have to go somewhere to stay while the restaurant is being cleaned. Then Mort says they can stay at his house. And that's about it for the plot. However, this episode isn't much about plot and focuses entirely on humor, which does incredibly well. Nearly every joke in this episode hits. But I shouldn't spoil them now, for the people who haven't seen it. Number 9. Bob Day Afternoon, Season 2, Episode 2. In this episode, the bank across the street from the restaurant gets robbed, and some hostages are taken. When Mickey, the person robbing the bank, says he wants burgers or he'll shoot a hostage, Bob goes over with burgers and gets taken hostage. When Mickey reveals that he doesn't know what he's doing and starts to panic, he then runs out and gets caught by the police. This episode is just a constant comedic high that never comes down. Number 8. The Belchies, Season 2, Episode 1. This episode focuses more on plot and mystery over comedy, but most of the jokes that they do tell are still great. The plot of this episode is that Gene, Louise, Tina, Jimmy Jr., Andy, and Ollie go to an abandoned taffy factory where Louise gets trapped in a booby trap and starts talking to a dummy made of taffy named Taff. Then Bob and Linda go to find the people in there, and they find everyone. Then, while Louise is still trapped and everyone is trying to get her out, the factory starts to get demolished. This episode was great and probably the best way to start Season 2. Episode number 7, Sexy Dance Fighting, Season 1, Episode 4. This episode is about Tina joining a capoeira class. And if you don't know, that's a form of, at the time, illegal Brazilian fighting. But this is the funniest episode of Season 1. Its plot is very simple. That lets them focus on comedy entirely, which is why this episode made it here. The episode doesn't leave me with much to say other than it's a very funny and solid episode. Number 6. Food Truckin', Season 2, Episode 5. In this episode, food trucks are invading the street where the restaurant is at, so Bob gets a food truck and tries to get the customers. And then, when there were no customers, goes to a food truck festival, where the kids start to eat from all the food trucks and leave bad reviews, after Bob asked them to make honest reviews. Then after they start to realize, the people start to fight back, and the family has to hide in their food truck, where Randy comes. This episode is hilarious all the way through, and I highly recommend it. Number 5. I'm kind of cheating with this one, but How Bob Saves/Destroys the Town, Parts 1 and 2, Season 4, Episodes 21 and 22. In these two episodes, we were given some of the greatest jokes, plots, songs, and moments of character development in the entire series. These episodes are just jam-packed with story. In these episodes, the plot is that Mr. Fischoeder's brother Felix is trying to sell Wonder Wharf to build condos in a nightclub. Then there is a great song where Bob convinces Fischoeder to sell the wharf, after which Bob realizes the error in his ways. Meanwhile, the kids are at Wonder Wharf and Tina bike locks herself to a horse on a carousel that is about to be destroyed. Then Felix ties Bob and Fischoeder under the pier, where the tide will make them drown. Then, after they get Tina off of the horse, Linda, Teddy, and the kids start to look for Bob, beat up a random guy who they thought kidnapped Bob. Another great song, and then Felix starts to wonder if he did the right thing. Then the family and Teddy confront Felix, and he reveals himself. And then they all go to save Bob and Fish Odor when Felix's girlfriend comes to shoot them because she didn't get her nightclub. When part of the wharf falls on her, making her drop the gun, then she gets arrested. This episode is just hilarious all the way through. It's definitely deserving of the number 5 spot. Number 4, Dawn of the Peck, Season 5, Episode 4. This episode is a great parody of Dawn of the Dead, where Wonder Wharf is holding the Turktacular Turkey Town Festival, when the turkeys run wild attacking people. Meanwhile, Bob is at home drunk when he goes out to get a turkey. Well, Teddy, Linda, Mickey, the kids, Rudy, Andy, and Ollie are leaving the wharf. Then Teddy dropped off Andy and Ollie. Then the remaining kids go to the store to look for Bob. Then Linda manages to tame the turkeys. This episode is downright hilarious and gets the parody down very well. Number 3, The Gale Tales, Season 5, Episode 13. In this episode, there are 3 stories about Gale, each one topping each other in nearly every way. The comedy in this episode is incredible, showing characters like Tina, Jean, and Gale at their absolute best. But there isn't much else to say because there's much less plot than normal due to the fact that it's just 3 short stories, but there are so many great jokes. On the topic of how there are multiple short stories, this episode is very similar to the Treehouse of Horror from The Simpsons or Anthology of Interest 1 and 2 from Futurama. Number 2, Tyrannosaurus Rex, Season 3, Episode 7. This episode is fantastic. Honestly, this episode is super close to number 1. I put it like 0.1 below it on a 1 to 10 scale. But anyway, to the episode. In this episode, Bob and Tina are picking up a napkin delivery when they are in a lot with only one other car that happens to be parked. So Bob lets Tina drive in the lot, and in a hilarious scene, Tina hits the parked car. Then after their insurance agent invites them to a house party, Tina burns down the house. Then he admits that it's insurance fraud and he's gonna try to do more. But then, when he said that, Jean was audio taping it, and they send the audio to the government, which is the only part of this episode that really doesn't make sense. And the insurance man was arrested, and the episode ends. This episode features all the characters at their best. What could possibly be better? And without further ado, number 1, The Odor Games, Season 5, Episode 21. This episode is the greatest parts of multiple episodes that we've already passed on the list. It is the characters at their best, like in Tyrannosaurus Rex and the Gale Tales. The great parody of Dawn of the Peck. The jokes of how Bob saves/destroys the town, Part 1 and 2. The comedy of Tyrannosaurus Rex or sexy dance fighting. The chaoticness of Bob Day Afternoon, Food Truckin', and Dawn of the Peck. This episode is the Hunger Games. Both Bob's Burgers characters and water balloons. So no one dies. So as the competition goes, eventually it's just Bob, Jean, Louise, and Jimmy Pesto. Then, Mr. Fish Odor starts a battle with everyone against Bob because he was stalling. And then it ends on an actual heartwarming moment. This episode is the best Bob's Burgers episode, and I highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't checked out the show, or people who have watched the show but just not gotten to the episode. Do you disagree with anything on my list? Please leave a comment down below if you do. And goodbye.